Hi, I'm David Mathews from Spark of Life, where our heartbeat is to walk beside those who are grieving and they're devastated by loss. The question of the day is, how in the world do you get over the loss of a pet? When a pet, a dog, a cat, other different kinds of pets, of course, has died, and you feel lost without them, and then you maybe even feel bad for feeling lost with that loss of a pet, when others around you might have experienced loss of multiple children or spouses and children, and perhaps you don't even think you have the right to feel bad. Well, I know you're watching this video for a reason, and it's because you've probably lost a pet that has meant so much in the world to you. Right now, my wife and I are on about our fourth dog, and after the loss of Ladybug, a black lab, about 6 or 7 years ago, we vowed never to have another pet because it hurt so deeply. And we did grieve the loss of Ladybug. And then we got a PTSD service dog given to us. Her name is Roxy. She's a golden retriever, and she's now 5 years old, and we've had her for 3 years. I cannot imagine life without Roxy. Doesn't that sound strange? Well, if you're watching this, and you are, yeah, you get it, don't you? The loss of a pet can be a major loss in the lives of many people. In fact, in the lives of thousands upon thousands of people. So today I want to give you some pointers and some insight about how maybe you can help to have hope after the loss of a dear pet to you and live forward with that pain. And I said this in almost all our videos at Spark of Life: I can't take away your pain. You might ask, what authority do we have at Spark of Life to talk about pain? Well, we've done about 108 3.5-day grief recovery retreats all over this country at 13 different locations, with over 1,500 people coming to these 3.5-day retreats. They've come from all over the world. We've done about 70 grief workshops for businesses and churches. We've worked with funeral homes, and we've worked with people almost on a daily basis of those who are experiencing loss, devastating loss. And I can't combine all those losses into one or two different categories. We've had people who've lost children, multiple children, people who've lost spouses and children, non-death losses such as divorce and childhood sexual abuse and being abandoned. We've done retreats and where people have come who've lost their child to sex slavery, others who have lost their health, they've lost their income, they've lost their jobs, they've lost their career. They've lost the dearest on earth to them. And so at Spark of Life, we've learned so much from these 1,500 grievers that we've spent 3.5 days with, and from the thousands upon thousands who've come to our grief workshops, and I don't even know how many people who've called us on the phone or emailed us or texted us about their grief. And so what do you say to somebody who's lost a pet? Well, here's what I want to share with you very briefly this morning. Number one, I want you to remember this: your grief is your grief. It's nobody else's. And the reason you need to own your grief is because of your relationship to your pet that is different than everybody else on the planet. Even if you're married to somebody and you lost the same pet, your relationship with that pet is different. Roxy is our PTSD service dog. She really belongs to my wife and to Spark of Life. We take Roxy to most of our events. That's where she's permitted to go, and she's a great comfort to the people who are there. In fact, they all fall in love with Roxy. Many times people have wanted to offer to buy Roxy from us, and I always say, well, she probably is worth about $20,000, and then we'll sell her for $20,000, but you have to kick in about $20 for my divorce fees, right? Because if I sold Roxy, that woman down there who's downstairs, my wife Debbie of 46 years, she wouldn't be a happy camper, right? I wouldn't either, to tell you the truth. I wouldn't sell her for any amount of money. That's how much she means to us. So your grief is your grief because your relationship with your pet is different than everybody else's in the world. I had your relationship with anything you lose, whether it's a person, a pet, or a job, or the dream of a marriage, or maybe you have a handicapped child and you lost the dream of what parenthood would be, and you've had to adjust. That's a big loss as well. It could be a blessing as well, right? So your relationship is different. I remember a good friend of mine was a head football coach at a high school. He gave, and the whole coaching staff gave their hearts and their lives to those teenagers that they coached. They They were with them all the time. They mentored those kids. They became like a second father to those young men. And one night they were playing for the right to go to the state championship, and that was their goal from day one. And a lot of these kids had gone to the same school for years, and their goal was to go to the state championship game and win the state championship game. And they worked 365 days a year for that goal. And out in the semifinal game, the team where I was teaching at school had a field goal attempt to win the game and go to the state finals. And the snapper snapped it over the holder's head. It was a chip shot field goal. That we had the great field goal kicker. And we lost the game on the last play of the game where we had that game in hand. And I'll never forget, a few days later, we had a bunch of people over to our house, and the head football coach and his wife was there, and the head coach was very, very depressed. And he sat on the couch, and a good friend of ours that had gone to church with us, she comes in and she looks at him and says, "Why are you so downcast? It's only a game." He looked at her. I'll never forget the look he gave her, because you see, to him, it was not just a game. It wasn't about the football game. It was about those kids. His relationship with that particular group of kids, plus the relationship that she had, those two relationships were totally different. To one, it was just a football game. To the other, it was life. I mean, it was about investing his life into these kids, and those kids, they were heartbroken. Yeah, he'll get over it. He'll get through it. But I'll tell you one thing, and that was 30 years ago. If he came in the room today and I said, "You remember that game?" He'd start telling me every single detail about that game. It still hurts, even though he's gotten through it, but it still hurts. It's very important to realize that your relationship to the one you lost, or the thing you lost, is yours and yours alone. So here's the deal. You do not need to feel bad about feeling bad. You don't need other people who might tell you, so, "Well, it's just a pet." No, it's not just a pet. It's something, somebody, a pet that means the world to you, and perhaps has given you love and acceptance like maybe nobody else in the world has. I'll never forget I was preaching in a church once, and there's this man who had a service dog. And I'll call the service dog Moses, and Bob was the man who had the service dog. And I'll never forget this. He was a service dog to a diabetic alert dog, and Bob was a diabetic, and the dog Moses was there to help him and to alert him when his blood sugar got too high or too low, and he was about to go into shock, for example, and that dog would recognize it. And I'll tell you one thing, the relationship he had with his dog was different than everybody else's relationship. See, the relationship you have. And so here's the thing. You don't need fixing if you're suffering grief from the loss of a pet. You have the right to grieve, and you need to take that right, not in the face of other people, but inwardly take that right. Give yourself permission to grieve. And number two, do not compare losses. Try not to compare losses. I don't deserve to grieve because others have bigger losses than I do, often is a formula or a recipe for remaining in deep grief. If I don't think I have the right to feel bad, when these feelings come over me that are common with grief, and I don't think I should be grieving, then what's going to happen is I'm going to grieve even deeper because I've stuffed all of those feelings down. So don't compare losses. Look, I'm going to be honest with you. There are people with greater losses than Dave Mathews. I know somebody who's lost 6 kids. I know somebody who lost 5 kids, all under the age of 1 year of age. I know somebody who's lost 2 kids to murder, and the one who murdered their kids was his wife, and then she took her life by suicide. I've talked to these people. If I compare my losses to their losses, I say, well, I know I've got losses, but my losses aren't as bad as their losses. And the fact of the matter is, that doesn't matter. I know there's people with greater loss than me, but I also know this. I have the right to grieve my losses because of my relationship with the one or the person or the thing that I lost. So try not to compare your losses. And this is good words of advice for everybody in grief. Please don't compare losses because your loss is your loss. You have the right to grieve your loss. It makes a tremendous difference. And our third point is the permission to grieve a pet's loss leads for permission for you to live forward with your pain after you lose a pet. You are in charge of your own recovery. You're in charge of your own grief, and you're in charge of your own recovery. Now, it's okay to get help. It's okay. This video and what Spark of Life does, it's okay to get help. And this is our last point we're going to make, that giving voice to your pain, no matter what your pain is, it's your pain. And giving voice to your pain to someone who simply listens and doesn't try to fix you is life-changing. You share your pain verbally with me, and you cry with me, and I just shut up and listen, and I don't try to fix you, and I'm there for you. It makes a world of difference in the life of somebody. I guarantee you, because the pain shared does lessen the pain a little bit. I'll still have my pain. I still miss Ladybug. I call my dog Roxy Ladybug about every week, right? And my wife says, Ladybug's been gone 6 years. We've had Roxy for 3 years. You see, I still have a little pain from that, but I am living forward with that pain, right? And so giving voice to your pain to somebody who will not try to fix you and will listen to you means the world. At Spark of Life, that's what we're there for. So I know we haven't gone over a lot of deep stuff here today, but I think it's fundamentally sound, and I believe it can help you. And go to sparkoflife.org. We have grief recovery resources that will help you. We have people trained who have been through the pain of loss and grief, and they have been trained to listen and not judge and not condemn, and especially don't try to fix somebody who's in grief. If you've lost a pet, that means the world to you. That has meant the world to you. I'm so sorry. That pain is real, and you have the right to grieve. You also have the right to recover. So go to sparkoflife.org. If you would like to donate to Spark of Life so we can help more people, you can go to sparkoflife.org and hit the give button. But the main thing we want is to help you with your grief. So if you would like to get some help, go to sparkoflife.org. We've got grief recovery resources online. We've got a grief recovery course. We've got grief coaching. We have grief recovery retreats scheduled for next year, both online retreats and in-person retreats. And we're going to get back to doing in-person retreats. And this COVID thing's, it's not going to stop us forever to doing in-person retreats. And April is our first date we're shooting for to have that in person. But in the meantime, we're going to have online retreats, exactly the same material. At Spark of Life, there is always hope. There's always hope at Spark of Life. And if you need help, go to sparkoflife.org. Be a subscriber to our video channel here on YouTube. Be a subscriber. Like it if you like it. Comment on it if you would. And just remember this, you're not alone. At Spark of Life, there's always hope.